Hello, nerdy romantics. We are talking Children of Blood and Bone, a fantasy YA fantasy book by Tomi Adeyemi. We are going to talk about just about everything about this book. So I'm going to give a spoiler alert right now, just in case we spoil it. We're going to try not to spoil it, but we will be talking about plot and other things like that. So, um, yeah, let me just do a spoiler alert right here. All right, so stay tuned while we talk about this wonderful book, and we're going to actually give it a star rating, a Goodreads star rating. So stay tuned. This is the Nerdy Romantics Podcast, and I'm your host, Y.M. Nelson. Okay, how are we doing today, Staci?
It's been a long week, but it's Friday, so hey, bring
Hey,
on the weekend.
I feel you. I feel you on that. It's been a very, very long week. But I am excited to talk about this book.
Mhm.
I recently finished it. Well, it's been a couple of weeks since I finished it. Um, but I really like this book. So, Stacy, what did you think of the book? Because you read it before me and before I decided to actually do this for the podcast. What did you think?
Well, when do you have the book in hand? Can you tell me when it was published? 'Cause I think I read it that year that it was published.
At teen
No, okay, I've
or
read it at
2019?
2019, 2020. It's been a while since I've read it. But the fact that you said you're gonna read that book, because when they said they were gonna do the movie about it or do a movie or a series, I was like, oh my gosh, because I really did enjoy it. I didn't read it, I listened to it, and it made those 8 hours going to driving a whole lot faster. And typically, I mean, we've talked about before like YA books and all that, and
Mhm.
I'll be honest, I'm not really into a lot of YA. I know some people are really interested in it, and I'm not. A lot of times, I want more adult, just adult characters and all that.
Mhm.
But for this one, I really did enjoy it. It was something that kept me going for the whole time because I have even audiobooks. I can put those down if I need to.
Yeah.
But the fact that it was the first time I've really read something like that or listened to something like that where it had a diverse cast or diverse characters. And if you read like the second one, because there's several in the series, that was the first one.
Yes.
She does expand on characters from different ethnicities in it, from different locations. But this is the first one where you had a group of people of dark skinned African people, and I don't think they actually refer to as Africa, but their world, which was the same thing as you do anywhere else. Like, they don't mention, oh, we're in a white country. They just actually just say this is the world, and there's no real reference to that anything else but that. But well, I don't want to tell too much because I'll be spoiling everything.
No,
And
it's
just saying,
okay.
I enjoyed the book. So,
All right. Yeah. I mean, I enjoyed the book too. And um actually I heard about it when it first came out, of course, but I was thinking YA fantasy, that's not for me. I was the same way that you were. I was like, I don't think I want to do YA fantasy, but of course, I like reading a little bit outside of the genre. I write every now and then. I'll read, some mysteries, I'll read thrillers, I'll read sci-fi. And I said, you know what? Why not read some fantasy? But what I really liked but I didn't pick it up, I should say, until they talked about the movie. And actually, the author talked about the movie on Threads, and they had just cast the movie, and she showed a picture of the main characters of the cast, and she was so excited. And as I saw the main characters of the cast, I was so excited as well. I thought, wow, she has got some heavy hitters on this one. I love the fact that um she's got all different shades of us represented here, because as I read the book after that, I realized, wow, there's different shades of us here, which we're actually gonna kind of get in a little bit into like the colorism of it all, because there's some colorism going on here. There is some outright racism going on here, not as we see it, in our society, being American society, but I see a lot of parallels here, especially with the times that we're in. But the other thing that I liked about it, and you kind of touched on it too, Stacey, is the the folklore of it all. You can tell that it's probably Africa, and that there are magi clans here, and these magi clans are African tribes. A lot of them are actual African tribes that I know of. So I feel like a lot of this has African folklore in it, even though some of it may just be made up for this world. But you have, I think, a foundation of African folklore from the little that I know of it here. And I really like that. So, of course, we've just touched on a lot of a lot of stuff here. Both of us have touched on a lot of stuff here, but well, first thing, since I've just talked about the African folklore, A, Stacy, have you kind of read anything that has is kind of delved into this? I know from a writer's perspective, and seeing other authors and then other influencers talk about it online, there's not enough African folklore fantasy. You get Greek mythology fantasy, you get, English, Middle Ages, you get that history kind of fantasy. But is this one of the first kind of things that you read that spoke to like an African folklore? And what did you think?
Well, it is because I mean, like I said, Greek mythology. I remember reading that in high school, and then you seeing that in reference
Mhm.
to Marvel universe, not just Greek because it's Viking mythology. We have Thor, but he also goes to the pantheon of the gods, and who's he see Zeus. But there's a whole slew of African folklore that we rarely see, and I mean, I also know. We rarely talk about. There's not much that we talk about it. The only
Right.
time we hear about kind of Africanized folklore would be if they're talking about hoodoo and all that, and they'll say like Papa Legba and all that kind of stuff when they're referencing certain things here.
Right.
But we rarely see it outside true African folklore, which kind of, I was in the bookstore like a few weeks ago, and you know how you go through the sections with it, the bargain books and all that, and they had this
Yes.
thing about different folklores, and that's the only time it was one of the things I was like, "Oh, I think I'm gonna buy that." I was like, but I didn't really. I'm trying to keep within my budget, so I didn't get anything.
Right.
But one of them had African folklore, and I was like, dude, if I was gonna buy something, that's what I was gonna get because it had, Greek folklore, Irish folklore, but there was few of them that you actually see African folklore. And this kind of leads me that we don't see a lot of it because a lot of people are just. Well, I say a lot of people, the world or our society in general doesn't really appreciate it.
Yeah.
We do Vikings, they'll do Greek, they'll do all that, but they won't do African. And then in our own communities, and I know we haven't talked about sinners and all that. Now people say it's the devil and it's whatever and it's demonized and it's like whenever and they say that not because of the vampires, but the love interest from it, and she was doing hoodoo, and they're
Yeah.
like, it
Which
seems
is
like every time
different from voodoo,
which
y'all.
is different from voodoo. But also, it's like when it's our kind of cultural folklore and all that, it's a devil, it's demon. But when it's
Yeah.
Zeus and all that and whatever, it's classical. It's not the
Right.
same thought process. And I read when I listened to the book and everything. One of the things I liked one of the things is that when I was younger, I used to read a lot of fantasy, and there's one set of books I used to read, You Sword and Sorceress, which was women, what main women character, just women characters. So it'd be sorceress, and there were women and women warriors and stuff like that.
Right.
But predominantly, if you read the series, they had a whole series, like 17, 18 books in that whole series, because it was anthologies, different stories all the time. They were mostly the characters. If read them, we could tell that they were white. They weren't black characters, except for one story that I would sometimes see in there, and she was a warrior, and it made me think, what, reading it, that's just from Africa or someplace
Yes.
like that, because her what she wrote was a giant water buffalo, and she was a warrior, female warrior that sworn to chastity. It was just but one story, and occasionally I would see it every so often in the anthologies, because it was, the author would send it out. I guess when it got approved, it was in the anthology. But
Right.
when I read, listen to this book, it made me think, dude, I need to bring back those Sword and Sorcery, see if I can find that story. And it's like, was it the same author? Was they, because it was similar in the fact that, I mean, it wasn't really similar in the fact that we have the Magi and all that, but it was similar in that folklore and those roots, which I rarely saw, growing up,
Yeah.
especially at our age bracket. You didn't really read anything, especially a black female heroine who's a warrior who did, went around. You didn't read that at all,
Right.
and so I guess part of the reason why I like this book was the nostalgia of when I was younger and I used to read those books, and I used to just occasionally get that story, one of those stories in there, and it would be just something new, and I always would read it, especially that particular storyline. I would read it.
Yeah. Yeah.
So,
I'm the same way growing up. We had to read Greek mythology. We had to read, Roman Empire stuff. We definitely read about Middle Ages, and we read Canterbury Tales and Beowulf and all this other kind of stuff that was very European, but did I see African folklore anywhere? No. And you're right. What we get of African religious slash spiritual culture, we got here what they basically brought over and that they could save, which a lot of it is either hoodoo or voodoo, right?
was Korea and okay, and was it Santeria?
Santeria, yes,
Yeah.
yeah. So, which to me is more of a religion, whereas this, which is more folklore, this is the storytelling culture. This is how they brought the morals to the people. This is like where their stories would come from, and the fables, like different fables and things like that. So we didn't get that cultural part. So seeing it here and Children of Blood and Bone, I just felt like, oh my gosh, I got something really new and I just want to consume it. This is just amazing. And I knew we were going to do this podcast. So I stopped myself from getting the next book because I wanted to get all of them in the series, but I didn't want to confuse what we were talking about. So I was like, I'm going to do the podcast and then I'm going to read all the other books. And so there are, with other like African folklore books, there are a few other ones, new ones that I've seen that have kind of come out. I feel like with although this is not the first one that gives me the African folklore that gives that feeling and that has that foundation, but I think in recent years this is probably the most successful one,
Hmm.
since A, they're making a movie out of it, and B, I just found out that this is not only a New York Times bestseller, this is over 2 million copies sold of this book. So I'm just in awe, right? And I think what's happened is now that this book has come out and it's been so successful that we see more fantasy books come out. Fantasy books with black folks in them or fantasy books with diverse
Characters.
characters, and then also more African folklore books come out. So I like the fact that I wanted to bring this out because I do have fantasy in the nerd pop culture arena, but I don't talk a lot about fantasy. I feel like because maybe I'm not as exposed to as much fantasy, and the fantasy that I am exposed to it are things in that same European vein, And is it me or is there not one dragon in this book? There are no dragons in this book. Thank you. Thank you. No dragons in this book. But they are lioness and panthers. And I'm
Mhm.
like, oh my gosh, I love this. I love I love the whole um I feel like I can see the scenes. I feel like I can see the settings of it and it just looks amazing and I can't wait to see this on screen. And with that, so let's talk a little bit about the plot of it or the hero's journey. These folks are going through some stuff. We're going to talk about characters too, but it's fun to talk about the characters actually doing stuff here because there's a lot of plot here and there's a lot of characters to follow. Our main character here is Zelie, and she is, what do you think, Stacy? Maybe about 19 or so?
Really, I thought she was. To be honest, when I listened to the book initially, I thought she was a little bit younger
I kind
than
of
that.
thought too.
But I know they're gonna age her, probably age her up for the movie and
Yeah.
everything. But I thought she was younger because she didn't think she were referring to. She wasn't considered, I think, marriageable age at that point. So I just
Right.
kind of put her in as younger, and some of the stuff that she was talking about, referring to. I thought she would be. To me, I consider her more like early teens, while her
Okay.
brother to me was older. Like if you said 19, whatever,
Right.
I was seeing him as more that age bracket, and her more like
A
13,
younger.
14. Kind of
But
that kind of age bracket at first.
yes, and at first I thought the same thing. I thought maybe she was like maybe about 13 or 14. However, there's this one point in the book where they're actually more they're not midway through the journey, they're a little bit past midway through their hero's journey, and they find other diviners, which when we talk about diviners in this book, the diviners are the people that we assume the diviners are the people with the magic. They had magic before and they possibly have the seeds of magic again. But when she meets that group, there's this one leader of that group, a girl who is 13.
Hmm.
And she was talking about how young she was. So that's why I was like, oh, I got to change the way I look at her.
And
Is that
to be
what you?
honest, well, to be honest, I thought the same thing, but also
Yeah.
it's been a few years since actually parted. And please stop me if you correct me or stop me at any point, because I was listening to the second one. So please don't, you've gone too far, Stacey. Stop.
Okay.
Because in the second one, man, I realized how older she really is from certain situations.
Yeah.
And so I'm trying to remember exactly from that first book what I thought of her age bracket and everything. But also, again, it could be just because of how watching stuff here, TV and stuff like that, and we always age up
Yeah.
or age down kids, and just because she seemed more innocent in a way, I kind of just aged her down.
Hmm.
But I'm thinking more that was at least initially from reading or listening to it was because of that situation, that kind of thing. Because every time we watch something, kids that's supposed to be in high school are 20 something, and
Right.
so and some of the situations they go through is like, yeah, they need to have 20 something play in it. So when I'm thinking her as a, and at my age, thinking she's young, so I'm thinking she's young, young.
Really young.
But
Yes.
then when you start, as you go through the book, you say, okay, she's more older, and maybe she's more. Still didn't think she was like 19 at that point in the first book, but
Right.
I thought by the end of it, I was thinking she was more like 16, 17, something like around that. And
I
I
agree.
think when she saw the other girl was so young, it's because of also experience. Because at the time they reach them, they've gone through a lot.
They
And I know we haven't really talked. We've talked about how we felt about it and everything, but not really what's happening in the books. But that whole thing of, well, I'll wait to see if that's what our next thing's gonna go into,
Well,
before I say
you're
anything.
yeah, you're getting where I want to go, which is basically that she starts her. But I do want to mention this before I forget it, and because you said I aged her down, I aged her down as well, and I think the reason why I aged her down is because of how she starts this hero's journey. I don't want to say she's selfish, but she's like not really thinking. She got the childlike thoughts. Like,
Yes.
I'm gonna leave dad for a little while by himself because I need to go and I need to graduate on how to wield this staff. And she had this staff, a stick like that kind of staff thing. And you know what? So this is totally off subject, but it gave me such a Black Panther vibe when she was given Mama Akbar gave her the staff that contracts and then she hits it and it gets bigger. It just made me think about, the army in the Dora Milaje in Black Panther. I was like, "Oh my god, she's got it." And then too, you know what? That also made me think, it gives even a little bit more kind of credibility to not that we need any more for Black Panther, but that was a very researched movie. And the fact that this book kind of pulls things in that you saw in Black Panther, it's like, oh my gosh, I feel like I really, have this connection that I didn't have before. But what you were saying about kind of hero's journey and what they do. So she starts this hero's journey by basically screwing up something that she went out and she is learning how to use this staff, and she left her father alone, and her father is really not in a condition that he can be left alone, and he went out to try to get the catch of the day so they can A, pay their taxes, and B, have some money. And so when he goes out, he is he basically leaves a boat out there and he, gets himself into physical trouble. So, you know, they have to kind of rescue him. You know, the older brother, Zane, who, yeah, I agree. I think he's around in that 19-20-year-old age. I'm agreeing with you on that. He is like, Zelie, why did you not stay with him? You're being an immature child. That's what I'm thinking of. So her hero's journey kind of starts off. Okay, so what we're going to do is I'm going to take this really expensive fish and I'm going to do what I do best, which is finagle some serious coins from some people in this city, which is away from this coastal town where they are, from this city in the market. And that's how she kind of starts her whole journey. And that is a whole lot there in just a couple of paragraphs. They go through a whole lot, which goes through the whole thing about the settings here. And in this book, just like in a lot of fantasy books, there are maps, which of course I went back and I looked at the maps. But there are also a lot of their cities, and there are a lot of people and cultures in these cities that you have to kind of know. So knowing the clans, knowing like the different cultures or learning about the different cultures as you go along is kind of part of your journey as a reader. And
Hmm.
so I'm sitting here and I'm reading and I'm enjoying what's happening. I'm loving that. And but then I also feel like I'm learning. The world building here is amazing.
Okay, and just remind me, I'm not sure when they tell like why, like, the taxes they're paying is partially because of her heritage. Do they
Exactly.
tell that part? I can't remember when they tell about the whole thing about what happened to them and why there's a, and it's not, was it not racism, but what did you call it, tribalism, or
You know,
'cause I'm
it's
not, because this,
definitely tribalism, but I feel like it's just plain racism. It's just plain
it is
racism.
racism, but yeah, because they're the
Oh, I was saying colorism. And the reason
color.
why I say colorism, so to answer the first part of your question, so they begin in the first chapter talking kind of about the reason why the taxes are so high is because um Zelie, Mama Akbar does not look like a diviner. The people who look like the diviners or the magic folks are ones with, and as you'll see on the cover, the woman on the cover has white hair. So, I mean, stark white hair. And the diviners all have that stark white hair. So, Mama Akbar doesn't have that. We'll find out why. But Mama Akbar doesn't have that. But she is, teaching Zelie, who does have the stark white hair. And so it's kind of an indicator that, oh, this person is with a diviner, so we are going to charge more taxes because this person is with a diviner. It's just basic racism. So like the diviners, like everybody's getting kind of charged the taxes that are not nobles. But the diviners, they have stark white hair. And the other thing is, this is kind of where the colorism comes into play. The other thing is they have, most of them tend to have dark skin, very dark skin. Whereas the nobles, they have well, not very light skin, but they are light skinned.
Lighter skin.
Yeah.
Mhm. 'Cause I think
They,
what was it Amari? Not Amari.
Amari, yes. The
I think it's her
princess.
princess. I think because her mother references to that or something about her skin tone. Yeah.
Yeah, her skin tone is a little bit darker brown than the rest of them, and so she's putting on powder or making Amari put on powder so she can be lighter. But Amari is still lighter than the diviners who are very dark skinned.
Mhm.
So
But I also
that's
like the
why
fact,
they're paying the taxes. Yes. Yeah.
and I
And
like the fact. Oh, go ahead. Sorry.
no, it's okay. You find that very early on, but you don't really find out all of that until we see from Amari's point of view. This book, by the way, everyone, is multiple points of view. So we have the point of view of the main character, Zelie, who is the diviner, in other words, the one who holds the magic, or who we hope holds the magic. She doesn't have it in the beginning.
Spoiler.
Then, yes, spoiler, but we already said spoiler.
Yeah.
But then there's the point of view of the princess and Princess Amari. And then we have the point of view of her older brother, Prince Inan, and they are of course the heir to the throne of this whole world called Orisha. So basically we got the 3 points of view, so we don't really know about the whole reason why the taxes and why people are being taxed until we get Princess Amari's point of view and until we get to Lagos, which is the town. So I keep thinking Lagos, it's a town, it's very industrialized, just like Lagos, Nigeria is right now, very industrialized, So it's very interesting how things mirror themselves here. But that's where we find it out. I'm sorry, Stacy, what were you going to say?
Well, no, I was just like, I couldn't remember. Again, it's been a while since I read the book of when they talk about that and that whole really basically Holocaust of them, of her spoilers by that, of that, of her
Yeah.
people, and specifically the ones that still had their magic, because we learned that they had all had magic, all not all, but all diviners had magic, and once they got became a
Mhm.
certain age, they would come into their gifts or powers,
Right.
and what was done, I'm not sure which book they actually talk about it at this point now. I can't remember that basically took the magic so that none of the young diviners would get into their power,
Yes.
and those that were already in power, which was her mother. That's why her mother's not. We don't see the mother in there as were slaughtered.
Yes.
So that to me is also a big part of it. I mean, she knows because she remembers her mother. I mean, and her how, or at least like Zane, one of them remembers their mother really well. I think she might have been too young to really remember her mother, but they talk about her mother's gifts today. Let me just make sure
Yes.
I'm okay. I'm
Yes.
making sure I'm not talking about
Everything
different
is in,
books. Okay.
not only is everything that you're saying in this first book, but it's in the very beginning of the book.
Yeah.
You're still in
Okay.
the very beginning, so you're
Okay.
not even really
I'm not
touching. Yeah.
sure. But
Yeah.
that whole thing about of how people just feared somebody for their gifts, and there was no war, there was nothing going on
Nope.
to do it except for the fact that one group of people had power, which they utilized to help others,
Yes.
while another group did not have power but believed they should be the only ones who have power. So that was like the nobles who are noble and think that they should have power, and that fear of the diviners that they were going to take it from them or
Yeah.
having to share power for it for another reason that they had gifts. But I mean, just reading that book, I mean, I like the fact that we have her journey, which is we started off like her. It was basically trying to bring a fish to market for food, and
Right.
it ended up being this huge, long. I mean, I hate to compare it to the book, Lord of the Rings kind of journey, or Fellowship of whatever the Fellowship
Yeah, the
kind of
Fellowship of the
journey.
Ring, yeah.
Yeah. So I mean, not the Lord of the Rings like they're trying to divide, but that whole thing, it was just
Yeah.
such a big journey for her, and how I think one of the things I liked about her is that she did not want to leave, which I can totally understand.
Yeah.
She's one of the person who kind of was thrust into a role that she really did not want to take. And you see over the chapters and after time how she takes on that responsibility. And I'm again trying to get too much into it, but how much she changes over the course of that book and into the other books about the how much it takes to lead, but also the toll it takes on you.
Yes.
And I mean, for a while, and I guess maybe that's why I liked it for a while, because it did have she's growing up, but you have those themes that we all understand, even as adults, how leadership roles can change you, how sometimes leadership is thrust upon you even though you don't want it, but because you're capable, you have those skills, you have to be made a leader, or you might be made a leader, and you have to go through all that she went to trying to save people that she loved. And people that even she did not know but needed her help.
Mhm.
And sorry, I'm kind of going off topic.
Well,
Sorry.
yeah, so let's table Hero's journey for a second because I really like where you're going. Well, a Hero's journey, it mirrors this in the fact that the hero's journey is basically a way of doing the plot. It's a trope that we see in most fantasy. That's why it's so very recognizable that she starts out in one place and then she's going through all of this other stuff and literally for most fantasy walking through different settings and different scenes. But let's come back to that, and let's go kind of where you're talking about, which another trope is a young person growing up by having power thrust upon them, the reluctant hero, if
Hmm.
as we'll call them a character trope. We see this a lot. We see it in a lot of superhero things as well. Something happens to a character's loved ones, or maybe even something happens to them and injustice is done and they want to make it right, but no, they don't want to lead these people. This means we got to start leading people somewhere. Oh, I'm not yeah, I can't do that. Oh no. And that's she was having that moment at several points in this journey. She was having her that's basically her inner conflict. And that's the inner conflict of a lot of the reluctant hero trope stories, is that inner conflict is, you know, I can't do or I can't be what these people want me to be. But the people outside already see that in you. And they're the ones that are giving you, like you said, the support. And at each place in her journey, there were people that did that actually. At the first place in her journey, this actually kind of goes very much together, Stacy. At the first place in Zelie's journey, she's like, I can't help this girl. Where are we gonna go? I just need to get out of here. She's seeing one kind of thing. It's like, I got this money. I need to get out of here. I can't help this girl. But she's like, listen, I need your help. So she's just being, consistent, persistent, excuse me, with it. Like, I really need your help. And then, the second time, that we see it, she's coming back and we kind of see her crumble a little bit when she goes back home and she's like, oh no, I can't do this. I can't be a part of this vision, because Mama Akbar has this vision, right? So she has another moment. And then when the vision is fulfilled and they get to that point in the hero's journey, she has another moment. And the Centauro, Lacan, there is like, you can do it. You're the only one that can do it. And she has another moment, and then she has several moments throughout this book where it's like, I can't do it, but at each moment you see her grow a little bit, and you see her get a little bit more confidence, and you see her, at least she overcomes this part, right? And it's amazing to see. And yes, I get why this is YA, but it's also mesmerizing to see that grow up
It
happen.
is, and it's not just because of her growth. We see it in the others, like the princess, because the princess has
Yes.
her own growth in it from her not having confidence in herself. Because they talk about how, she's dogging the other than what her mother wants, so she's not the ideal princess that we see, and she's also, I guess, in a way, an ally to Diviner. So
Yeah.
and she has sympathy and empathy for them. So not only sympathy but empathy for them. And so her growth from being a pampered princess to, as we see her growth over the course of the book, is going into the second, because a lot of times she seems to believe more in the purpose of the journey than Zelie does at times.
Yeah.
And you see her growth, and that's why one of like, because it wasn't one character that you could focus on, one character that you just saw. I mean, we have one main character, we have a main character, but these other characters are so fully drawn out and fully
Yes.
fledged and all that, that is not just a one man show.
It's
So
not. Yeah.
so you have all this growth of all the characters, and over time you'll see, how each one of them will change over the course of this journey and going into the next. But just to understand, I mean, I think that's one of the things that's what, to me, what made it a great book, was that it wasn't just a one-shot character
Yeah.
and everybody else was just little, could be replaced with something else. And it
Right.
wasn't that. Those were all fully fledged characters that you cared about and wanted to see grow and wanted to see change and wanted to see what was going to happen to them over the course of the whole book.
Right. Exactly. And each of them grew in different ways.
Yes, with
You
their own.
know.
Yeah, I mean, because you do have the trope, like, oh, she's that hero who never really wanted to be a hero, but becomes that hero. Then you have the princess who's pampered but idealistic, and to me, I guess, positive, like the positive
Yeah.
princess who wants to do that.
Princess.
Then her Zelly's brother is the jock who's trying to get his family up, because he was trying to win that game so he can get money and they can help, trying to get them up on a
Yes.
different level. Even though Zelly looks like she's a part of the group that's shunned and everything, but he doesn't. He looks like what he's the handsome you know, he's what they consider would be the man's man of their society. And
Yep.
he's trying to use his skills to get his family up. So it's like he's trying to bring them up, and it's like Zelie was the outcast, but he was the Mr. Popularity, and they're all in the same family. I mean, you saw lots of tropes like that, but at the same time, he wasn't just a handsome face, that kind of thing. He had
Right.
depth, and he had feeling that the whole reason he was doing the stuff he was doing was to bring his family up, to take care of his family.
Yeah.
So
He was very much the selfless, where Zelly's on this side of being the selfish, immature child, and he's on this side being the very selfless, the selfless sibling. But he, kind of grew as well to kind of realize, hey, I need to take care of myself as well. Because if I don't take care of myself, I can't help anybody else, especially when, he gets into, trouble later on in the book, and, he's getting into the interrogation kind of part and later on in the book. He's got to take care of himself, and he also, realizes, hey, you know, this is serious stuff. And Zelly, you ain't got it all together. So I need to go, because I'm about to get, messed up here. But he grows in that way. Princess Amari, I think she grows from being innocent,
mhm,
like when we say that pampered princess, she's innocent and she's naive to a lot of things that's going on. She knows that there's stuff going on because um because of the whole I have to powder my face kind of thing. And then, she her servant slash friend, Benta,
mhm.
mysteriously goes somewhere in the very beginning of the book. And so she's like, what's going on with that? But we find out, she finds out very quickly that her father is not the best person in the world, and probably has a big racial is probably the whole reason why diviners are, have this thing going on, because he does not like them.
Mm-mm.
And you find this very early on. So she has to grow up and grow in that way in order to get more worldly. And she basically says in the very beginning of the book that she hasn't even left the because Lagos is in this book is surrounded by a big wall, and the entrances have guards at the gates. So she hasn't even left this area. She really hasn't even left the castle pretty much, because that's how sheltered she was. So as she sees more of the world, she's growing and becoming more less innocent, less naive, and more practical, and more of, the person that she's meant to be, or the person that she is in the end. Which, I like that. I like that about all of these characters. And even, we didn't even mention Prince Anon, her brother, who's very much his father's son. He was very much against magic, and because he grew up in that, right? His father is telling him, hey, magic is bad. We got to eradicate this. So he's very much his father's son, and he very much grows up to, you
They're
know
evil. The evil
right.
divine.
Right. He's like, wait a minute, they're not the evil ones. We gotta, yeah. He grows into, a different person. And you're right. All of these characters being fleshed out, you know who you're rooting for. And you feel something, when they go through things, you know to not give everything away, but you feel something when they go through things. And then, the big thing is And of course, this is from the book blurb. We know that magic is gone, and we know that Zelie is part of the reason why we have how they're gonna get magic back. She's in some way, she's the way that we get magic back. And that's always in your mind. It's like, how's she gonna get magic back? Like, or is she gonna get magic back?
Mm-hmm.
Right? But along the way, you're thinking, oh my gosh, how's this person's life going to turn out? And how's this person going to turn out? And are these people going to get together? And are these people going to be in the mix in the end? And, you're wondering, you know, where these people, where these kids' lives are going to end up. You kind of forget about the magic a little bit.
Well, I mean, you do forget about it because it's not. I mean, it is what they're trying to get back, but you really don't see it a lot in play for most of the book. I don't think for hardly any of the book
Yeah.
until like the very end that you see that what the magic does for them. And I mean, trying to spoil the second one is like, okay, just because magic happens does not mean that's the end of the book. That's not the end.
Yeah.
Just because you can do something doesn't mean that magic wand wave. Oh no, I
Right.
mean you can't do
You
that,
should
and
do it.
it's just over.
Right. Exactly. We will continue this discussion on our next episode. Make sure you're subscribed to Nerdy Romantics Podcast wherever you get your podcasts, and visit nerdyromanticspodcast.com to subscribe to our newsletter, where you can get show notes directly in your inbox. Thank you for listening.